Hello and welcome to the second of 3 daily Aintree podcasts this week, brought to you by SBK. This episode will cover all of Friday's racing. Hopefully you watched us yesterday in episode 1 this week where we talked about Thursday's action. And if you enjoyed that and you've come back to this episode, make sure you join us again tomorrow as well, where we'll be talking about the national and the undercard. Of course, this podcast is brought to you by Ross Millar and myself, as per usual. And we're anticipating yet another dry day up in Liverpool on Friday. The ground is going to be continuously getting quicker, despite the fact they are watering. So hopefully we don't see a massive non-runners as we go into Friday's card. Before we start with the previews, I should talk about SBK's offer, which is a free bet builder for the 4:05 at Aintree on Friday. That is the Topham handicap chase. Very tricky race over the national fences, but they are offering a free bet builder for all customers. You just have to opt in for that offer to get it on your account. If you haven't got an SBK account as of yet, make sure you sign up and you can get that offer plus their welcome offer, which I'll mention at the end of the show. Quick question for you then, Ross, before we get stuck in to Friday's action. The national fences, which we'll see in the Topham, do you watch that race with a little bit more excitement because of the fences, or because they've obviously shortened the size of them in recent years, is it just like a normal handicap chase to you?
No, I still watch it with a degree more excitement than perhaps regular fences. I probably watch it with a more comfortable sense of ease. Actually, TC, I love horses. That's what brought me to racing, and I do grapple sometimes with what we ask them to do, and I'm pretty comfortable with the stance that largely they're looked after very well, and they're well educated, they're given the tools to go and do the job, and I can sit pretty easy. But no one likes to see horses on the backside of a fence, having suffered an injury or worse. And what anyone ever says, yes, maybe it's not the spectacle of old, but Aintree have made a really good job of making the race safer, reducing numbers, fences. I mean, even the runoff areas, I'm old enough to remember Paddy's return, taking them all out at Canal Turn when there was nowhere for him to go. So I'm fully on board with the change they make, and I'm afraid if you don't like it, then you're just going to have to get with it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Safety is paramount. For all that you may not get as many thrills and spills, there aren't many thrills when it comes to spills in horse racing. So I think the changes are a fantastic move. We'll talk more about the Topham later in this podcast, but over the next 15 minutes or so, plenty of tips coming your way. Right, we'll begin with the previews then, and we'll start with the Grade 1 Mildmay Novices Chase at 1:45 on Friday. Handstands is all the rage here for Ben Pauling as he steps up to 3 miles. Is this the right trip for him, Ross, and are you with him or against him?
I think it's the right trip from on this ground, TC. I think 2 mile 4 on this ground would have been an absolute no-no. I just wonder whether everyone's getting a little bit carried away about the Django Bay form from the Ciliars at Sandown. And I think we're both in agreement. And I'm sure Nico would say it as well. Wasn't his finest moment. I think he got stuck between doing two things, waiting and having a late run and committing early. Ended up doing a bit of each and essentially doing nothing. And I just bring you back to Handstand's first run at Wincanton on good ground. Never looked comfortable, jumped out to his left quite dramatically, and eventually got rid of Ben Jones. Just wonder if they go quick early here, whether he's going to be comfortable. I think he's also undoubtedly better with a bit of cut in the ground. They're going up in trip, hoping that will bring about his stamina. At a price I could ignore him, but he does arrive here fresh. I think that's a good move, and Ben Pauling was pretty clear from some way out this is where he'd come. Caldwell Potter, I mean, really put it together, didn't he? And Nichols got to stick his fingers up at a few at Cheltenham winning, but it was a handicap. He was well weighted. Goes up in trip. I think that'll suit. But he's got foot issues, and you'll know from the flat that sometimes a horse will let itself down on quick ground once, won't do it again if they get a bit jarred up. I'd just be a bit concerned. 3-week turnaround on what is clearly a fragile horse, takes a lot of managing. For all that he might have the class for this next season, I'd be worried about him at a price. Dancing City, I know you like him. I just don't see how this track and trip is going to suit on this ground. So I'm going to take 2 at each way prices. K de Bourbon, I was really quite sweet on him at the beginning of the week when I kind of hoped Paul Townend might jump ship and ride him on account of the ground. He's been a slow burn over fences. He was a talented horse over hurdles. I thought he was putting in his best round jumping and running his best race when unseating Patrick Mullins at the top of the hill at the ditch in the Browns advisory. It was a very soft unseat. He should have stayed in the saddle. I hope that Danny Mullins might get on. It's Patrick again. I don't quite know how he's jumped above them all and he's become de facto second rider at Closutton, but there we are. So that does temper my enthusiasm slightly because he's a good rider, but he's not as good as the professionals. 18-1, I think, is a decent each way price. And then at a bigger price, 20-1, don't rightly know for Polly Gundry, Charlie Deutschensaddle. She's rated 144. She gets £7 mare's allowance. That puts her in the mix. She's 3 from 3 in easier races than this, on slower ground than this. The ground could just take her off her feet, but she's a superb jumper. She stays really strongly. If she can lay up early, she'll come home really well. And I don't think she's a back number. And I thought, again, 20-1 each way. Those would be my two for small stakes.
Yeah, a couple of each way prices there for Ross. There are 8 runners, so this race does have an each way feel, and Handstands is taking up a big chunk of the market. I'll be looking to the other Willie Mullins horse in here, as you say, Dancing City. I don't really have a strong opinion, to be honest, on this race. He was just a horse I ended up coming down on. I thought he was travelling really well at Cheltenham until he made a bad mistake 3 out. And yeah, probably the ground won't be ideal for him at Aintree, but he may just get away with it. He has winning form at the track, so I feel like maybe he'll show up, but this isn't a race that I have a strong opinion of. And to be honest, if I was having a bet, I'd probably just be laying Handstands, purely because I think the price is a little bit too short. The second Grade 1 on Friday, is the top Novices Hurdle. That is at 2:55 p.m. Shorter price favourite here, Romeo Coolio, 5-4, another horse that exits a race at the Cheltenham Festival. Tripoli Flyer is second in at around 3-1, and then it's 6-1 Salvador Monday, and we're looking at much bigger prices the rest. I'm going to start us off here, Ross, because I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm going to be with Romeo Coolio, and to be honest, I think he's one of the better short-priced selections of the week at Aintree. There are quite a few. Obviously, there are several on the first day on Thursday, also some on Friday, and a couple on Saturday too. But I think Romeo Coolio would be in the top 1 or 2 if you're looking for short-priced bankers. This horse finished a good third behind Quebec de Board in the Supreme. The horse that was second that day was William Money. I think the first and second home there are pretty useful. And Romeo Coolio was bang up hard on the front there on a pace that was just way too quick in the race. And he managed to sustain his effort and finish third. His prior form, I think, is good enough to win this race. And I will be taking the 5-4 if I can grab a little piece of it. Ross, are you with me, or are you looking for a bigger price?
I'm not dead against you, TC. I do see that he's got compelling form credentials. Just to my mind, I take on board that he went pretty hard early on. I thought he just stayed going the same pace. I think he'd probably be a really exciting horse over 2 mile 4. He might still be good enough to get away with this, because Tripoli Flyer and Salvatore Money was well beaten in the Supreme. Tripoli Flyer didn't go. He would have been a big price. So he might be good enough. 3-week turnaround, and I bring you back again. We mentioned it on the Grand National Preview Pod. Gordon Elliott, 1 from 32, 3%. I mean, that, whichever way you dress it up, that's diabolical for a yard of his size. It clearly cannot be happy, and he clearly wasn't happy with him at Cheltenham, and it hasn't really picked up to any great extent. So for me, at that price, it was a reason to take him on. I was pretty sure I was going to come down on Tripoli Flyer. I watched him back. I could see him jumping out to his right here, so I've slightly abandoned ship, and I'm going to take a very small swing at Salvatore Monday. I just went back and listened to the Patrick Mullins interview afterwards, where he sort of came in and just, after the Supreme, gave an interview that suggested that he just felt it had all gone wrong. Salvatore Money was far too free for the early stages. We spoke actually before the Supreme that if you've got a horse that's keen, not sure Patrick's your man. He was far too keen, got posted wide, then lost his position, and then just stayed on going. He was beaten around about 20 lengths. Interestingly, they take the hood off here. I wonder if Paul Tannen's just going to let him rip and see if he can, outlast them. Nothing much makes strong appeal in this. 6-1. For what is clearly a talented horse, when he puts it together, I'll take a chance on him, but it won't be life-changing money, that's for certain.
Ross with Salvatore Monday then at 6-1. Romeo Coolio for myself at 5-4. Our third feature race is the Melling Chase. That comes at 3:30 p.m. Now, unfortunately, we're left with a pretty small field in here, just the 4 runners. But Jonbon takes a big percentage of the market, around 4-6. He is as short as 1-2 actually at the time of recording, but he may drift up a touch from there. He looks way the horse to beat in here. El Fabiolo has good past form, Protector at 2, especially at this venue. Matata maybe not at the level. Ross, do you see it the same way? It's all about Jonbon?
I do, TC. I mean, I know we try and avoid race that you don't want to have a bet in, but for me, this is just a watch race, because there is a chance. I mean, Jonbon gave himself a hard time at Cheltenham, didn't he, to do so much running, having made that mistake. This was a good performance last year. If it's taking the edge off him, I mean, Protectorat is as tough as teak, but I don't think the ground is going to suit him. Al Fabiolo's just lost at the moment, isn't he? I mean, they tried him up in trip last time and it was no better. Didn't seem to help his jumping. I mean, going slower almost seemed to give him more time to think about what to do and confuse me even more. Matata, I struggle to see him stay in the trip, and I don't think he's this class. So you come back to Jonbon, but at the same time, and I know I'm a bit of a conservative punter when it comes to odds on, but it would give me a nosebleed to back him off that hard race, off a 3-week turnaround. I just will watch it, and I hope he wins because I love the horse, and I still harbour hopes that he'll go back for the champion chase next year and finally put in a proper round. But yeah, it's all about Jonbon, but not a race to get excited about from a punting perspective.
Yeah, I completely agree. I won't be having a play in here. I know some punters love doing those win accumulators with the short price favourites. It's not for either of us. We've talked about that at length in the Cheltenham podcast. If you do, then Jonbon does look pretty much a good thing, but he will have to jump better than did at Cheltenham. The likelihood is that he will do that and win this race. We'll move on to the final feature race that we cover on Friday, and that is the Topham, the race that we talked about at the top of the show. This race at 4:05 p.m, and it is the event where SBK is offering that free bet builder. 9-1 the field here. Wide open punting race. Who do you like?
I like James de Burley, TC, and I am quite sweet on him. He just failed to last home last year. He went to the elbow, absolutely full of running, and just slightly gassed out. And the winner, Arizona Cardinal, came and swept by him. But that was on soft ground. He's actually off a pound higher rating this year, but he carries £2 less. I think in these sort of races, light weights will help him get home. I think if he'd have had £2 less last year, he might almost have won it, despite the margin of defeat at the end. He jumped round here like an old hand. He then went to Punchestown. He fell 5 out, but I thought he was travelling superbly well on that occasion. I think he'll like this better ground. Slightly concerned to see that Paul Townend chooses stablemate Blue Lord over him, but Blue Lord has got perhaps a class angle. JJ Steven's a really good rider. I hope he has a good week and gets a few winners on the board. So I really like James de Burley. And then just another one from last year, he finished 7th for Henry de Bromhead, is Chantruse. He was loving this test last year and then absolutely walloped. I think it was either the 13th or the 14th, 4 or 5 from home. And he really hit it. He was lucky to stand up. That put paid to any chance, and he just plugged on from there. But up until that point, it looked like it was a sort of test that suited him. There would be a question mark over this ground. If you go all the way back, he's got a really nice bit of maiden hurdle form on good ground, but that's a few years. Most of his ground has been on soft and heavy, but he races in Ireland, and most of their winter ground is soft or heavy. So not going to, completely dismiss him. The ground would be the reason. If he gets beat, that'll be why it is. But I'll take those two.
James de Burley then at 9-1 for Ross, and Chantruse, who's generally 16-1, is 19-1 with SBK. So make sure you play Chantruse with SBK if you like Ross's case. I haven't fully decided on my selection in this event as of yet, to be honest with you. I do want to see exactly how the ground is riding. I will come down on a pick before the racing on Friday, but the two in my shortlist are James de Burley for the reasons that Ross has said there, and also the Goffer, who is regularly a horse that just stays on out the back of the pack and finishes well in his races. But I think dropping him down in trip may actually see this horse in better light. Despite all of his form coming over further, you may watch some of his replays and think, well, this horse is a strong stayer at 3.5. Why would he suddenly want the Topham trip? I think we might see a different horse here. So keep an eye on the Goffer. It depends what price he is, but he may be the actual selection. You can find out on my social media if you care which horse I eventually come down on. Okay, that's the 4 major races talked about then on Friday, day 2 of the Aintree Grand National meeting. There are 3 other races on the card, including the Grade 1 Sefton. Ross, I'm not going to be having a bet in any of these 3 remaining races. Are you?
Yeah, I'm going to have a small go in 3 of them, actually, TC. In the Sefton, let's start with that because it is the graded race. Jamie Snowden, Gavin Sheehan, Julius de Picton. I really like this one. I think he's going to make up into a gorgeous chaser. He won over 2 mile 4 at Plumpton. Track didn't seem to suit. He was sort of pretty sharp test, and he was off the bridle a long way in, but I loved what he did up the hill at Plumpton. That was a fairly weak race. Then went to Chepstow, dropped back to 2 miles, but the more galloping trip helped him there. And then he was last seen at Exeter behind Fingal Bridge when Fingal Bridge beat Regent Stroll. Finished 3rd. That was nowhere near enough for a test in that grade. Jumps up now to this 3 mile test. I think it's really going to suit him. He's 41-1. He'd perhaps be a surprising winner, but I think he could well hit the frame. And whatever he does here, he's definitely a horse I'm going to follow going forward. And then the 2 handicaps, the first of 220, probably the horse I like most all week, actually, given the price, is Reckless Eric. He's around about 12-1 with SBK. I think this horse is going to absolutely love going up in trip. He won at Cheltenham off a fairly low opening handicap mark at the start of the season, then went back to Cheltenham off a fairly raised mark and did best of all when, if you remember, Mirabad slipped the field under Luke Scott. Really good ride. Nothing could get near, but Reckless Eric came from a long way back, did by far the best finishing effort there. Then went to Windsor. That track just didn't suit him, and then was last seen in the Imperial Cup at Sandown. Again, really good late work over 2 miles behind a well-handicapped winner in Go Dante. think stepping up in triple suit him the better ground certainly won't harm his prospects. So I like him at 12-1. And then the final race, the conditionals race closing the card on Friday, 5:15. Jack Hyde for Fergal O'Brien, Paddy Brennan Racing Partnership. Jack Hogan takes over in the saddle. Was ridden by Tom Broughton last time, which I think was a bit of a sighter. And what they hadn't realised was that Tom Broughton is not effectively a conditional. He's a claiming professional because of his age, which means he's not eligible, which is a real shame. You can ride in conditional races all year, and then the big race of the season for some of these boys, and Tom Broughton can't ride. Jack Hogan takes over, really positive pilot. I like Jack Hyde. He travels strongly, stays well. I think he's got a chance, and he's 11-1.
Some lovely selections there, good prices from Ross, especially good shout for Reckless Eric early on the card on Friday. So make sure you play a couple of those if you like Ross's cases. Thank you very much for watching this episode. Hopefully you've enjoyed the last 15 minutes or so. If you did, please like down below and subscribe to SBK to make sure you don't ever miss out on any of the SBK betting podcasts. We are generally here weekly. Ross has his own podcast as well, Miller's Movers, which I believe goes out on a Tuesday. But for these big meetings, we do the daily pods like this. A quick reminder that SBK is offering all customers, whether you're new or a previous customer, the chance to have a free bet builder on the 405 at Aintree on Friday. You just need to opt in to get that. It's 3 legs in the bet builder to qualify. All new SBK customers get £30 in free bets when you sign up and bet your first £10. And you can head to the SBK app to find out all the other promotions this week and in the future, as well as listening to our SBK betting podcast on the horse racing page. SBK is a completely new sports betting experience with sport at its heart. There is no sign of a casino or a roulette in sight at SBK. Sport is what SBK is all about. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to come back here tomorrow where we'll talk about Grand National Day.